was coming up on the ninth anniversary of a event that took place at my high school when I was his senior. A student that had been suspended earlier in the day returned to the school with his dad's handgun, went into the office of the vice principal that had just suspended him and opened fire. He struck and killed the vice principal and critically injured the head principal, who was responding to the sound of gunfire. The student fled the school and took his own life in a parking lot not far from the campus. I was in class at the time and an announcement came over the intercom that we were in a code red lockdown. Some students, teachers say that they remember the announcement saying that it was not a drill, but I'm not really certain if that was included or not. My class locked the door, turned off the lights, and huddled in the corner, but I don't remember a feeling of fear or that the room was tense. We had a couple of code yellows early in the year for small fights in the hallways, and code yellow red drills weren't uncommon, so the class felt more inconvenienced by the fact that we were just about to break for our lunch when the announcement was made than anything else. As we sat for longer without any update, a realization definitely began to come over the class that something more serious had happened, and we were all on our phones looking to get some idea of what was going on. This was before Twitter was super popular, and there was a ton of confusion and misinformation going around from the texts that people were getting from other students in the building and from family or friends who were now watching the story develop on the news. We eventually received word that the school was going to be taken out of the code red and students/faculty would be released room by room and escorted out of the building by an armed police officer. We waited what felt like hours. We'd missed lunch and the room was restless. And finally we received a knock on our door to indicate we were leaving. The officer walked us out the back to the school and through a parking lot that led through a church that neighbored the school. I met up with my parents and went home to watch my school on the news. Later that evening, I went to dinner with some friends to just spend some time with one another, and we got word while we were there that our vice principal had passed from her injuries. We finished our meal in silence, paid our check, and went to the school for a candlelight vigil. There had been around 400 plus people with candles and homemade signs, and people just took turns praying and speaking to the crowd. Nothing planned or officially organized, just an opportunity for people to hurt together. It sounds cliche when people say, I never thought it would happen here, but that really is the only response that makes sense after something like that happens. I remember an intense sadness in the days that followed and cried more than I ever had before or since. When I think back about that day, I like to remember the kindness of the community at the candlelight vigil and the posters of support from neighboring schools that lined the main hallway of the building for the next month. I was in the Arapahoe high school shooting in 2013. The kid got kicked off the speech and debate team and decided to get revenge on the teacher. He bought a shotgun and went into the school on Friday the 13th. He fired 2 shots right off my hallway and killed a girl, who later died after being in a coma for a couple weeks. Then he went to the library, started a fire, and killed himself. I was in my science class right off the hallway. We were in the middle of a test, and I, being the shit student I was, just wandered out. I was about to go ask if I could go to the bathroom when I decided, fuck it, I'll finish the test, then go home. 5 minutes later, there was a gunshot. The first thing that crossed my mind was that a janitor was removing one of those giant-ass wooden doors and accidentally dropped it, slapping it against the ground. Students looked back and forth nervously. Then a second shot went off. My teacher went out into the hallway and a minute later returned to the room and told us to get into lockdown. I guess he saw smoke in the stairwell and saw what happened in that hallway. Before long, we were all crammed into corners behind the big lab tables. I was sitting in the middle of the classroom, so I was one of the last kids to get a spot. So I was basically sitting out in the middle of the room hiding behind a trash can. The whole time my teacher, a massive slab of muscle, was upright next to one of the two doors, ready to fuck up anybody that might walk in. We were in lockdown a good 3 minutes before the announcement even happened. We sat there for what felt like hours before the fire alarm went off. I'm assuming this was the fire that started in the library. Yet even longer, we began hearing voices down the hallway. My teacher looked right to me. I'm in the middle of the room with a nervous look in his eyes. Finally, cop slash SWAT showed up. They tried the door and my teacher jumped and looked at me again. He was giving a violent nod and a thumbs up. They cleared the hallway before asking us to open the door. We all got pat down upon exiting and sat out in the cold on the track field for a couple of hours before being bussed off to a local church. I remember texting my parents and sister that I loved them. And funnily enough, I remember making jokes to my mom, because I bet she was more scared than I was, which was pretty fucking scared. For the rest of the month, we had a long winter break. When we all got back, things seemed really cool. Everyone was closer to each other and supportive. As the year went on, things went back to normal, the usual bullying and other shit, so I went to online school. I remember afterwards, while we were waiting to be bussed off, everyone was speculating who it was. They were speculating this one kid I knew and got along with pretty well. It was a weird kid, but lots of fun. I remember thinking it was shitty. All of a sudden, everyone wasn't surprised that it might be him because of the way he was treated. After school was back on, everyone was suddenly nice to this kid. They knew it was because they didn't want to be the next target. To the high school kids that might be hearing this, you know that one awkward, quiet kid that sits in your class? Don't be nice to him because you're afraid what he'd do if he snaps. Be nice to him because we all need that in our life. After all, we're all stuck on this rock hurtling through space. So just be fucking present to one another, start a conversation, ask about hobbies, just be a good person. It was the first day back from winter break before first period. I was about 15 meters away when it happened, just around the corner to the right. I was listening to Sick Sad Little Word by Incubus with my headphones, but that morning the song was different. The refrain usually had these crisp quarter note snare hits with some sweet hi-hat work on the offbeat. That morning though, it got to that part and my first thought was, why the hell is a snare drum offbeat? This isn't how I remember it. Those snare beats were the gunshots. They were so loud that I thought they were part of the song. The school is located in between rich and poor neighborhoods, and the first thing I saw after I took off the headphones were all the kids dressed in urban clothes running, and all the kids who dressed preppy standing in place with their hands in front of them in confusion, myself included. We were corralled into the gym and the school went on high alert. Police came and eventually we were let go into the parking lot with police escorts and eventually sent home. Fun fact, the news report that day had a woman voiceover saying something like, the tragedy was so shocking for students that many of them chose to run away from the school out of fear. The video played with the voice of the clip of my buddy running. Ironically, if you look closely, he was actually running towards the school, because according to him, he woke up late for class that day and had no idea a shooting was even happening. Camera crew must have snagged a clip of him running and repurposed it. Turns out, two dudes had beef, and one of them was a known drug user who was a bit unstable. Shooter shot the guy dead in the hallway and was caught the same day after fleeing. He was eventually given over 20 years in prison, but the whole story was sad. The victim was a teen dad, and the school authorities refused to give the victim a proper memorial in the school yearbook because they considered that to be bad PR and wanted to sweep it under the rug ASAP. The school offered free counseling for any student who wanted it in the library. Things never really felt normal after that, but to this day, when I listen to that song, it brings me back. Dawson College, Montreal, Canada, 2006. Just before getting on the metro, I texted my boyfriend that I was on my way to meet him at Dawson College for lunch. I asked him to meet me in the school atrium. There's lots of tables there. It's where a lot of students hang out between classes or just eat lunch. Meanwhile, a guy parked in front of the college and started shooting people. Inside, my boyfriend leaves the computer labs for the atrium and hear gunshots in the distance. Someone brought a BB gun to school, someone says. So my boyfriend is around the corner from the atrium when there's more gunshots, and the shooter had entered the building and the atrium is right at the entrance. Students start to panic and run, so he runs with them, goes out the emergency exit, and there's a student on the sidewalk who had been shot in the stomach. Meanwhile, I'm getting off the metro at the Atwater station. It basically stops right under the street between the college and the mall. I'm now texting my boyfriend that I'm in the mood for a Subway sandwich, taking my sweet ass time. As I get up the stairs from the metro platform to the entrance that connects to the school, it's just me and the slow old people. Cops are taking out caution tape, closing up the school's metro level entrance and diverting us to the mall. Cops are running around with grunge straw. It feels like a movie. The mall looks closed, but I can see that customers are locking themselves in the stores. I'm so confused. The cops start yelling at us to run towards the mall exit to Catherine Street. I'm trying to assess the situation. Do I just knock these old people out of my way to save myself? Luckily, an opening forms and I make it outside. The street floods with students. I ask a girl what's going on. She tells me, shooting. There was a shooting. Blood. So much blood. Next to me, the girl, her legs, so much blood. She fell. Bullet, so much blood, all dressed in black, blood everywhere on her legs. Right next to me, she fell. She burst out crying. I asked others, I'm told there was a shooting. 1 shooter, 2 shooters, 4 shooters in the atrium, in the cafeteria, on the first floor, no, the 3rd. They were wearing black or military fatigues. Everyone saw something different. It was chaos. All the cell phone lines were jammed, no one could get in touch with loved ones. Social media didn't exist. It was absolute chaos. Sirens and ambulances and helicopters were coming. Lots of students had left their wallets, bus passes, and keys in their lockers. They eventually shut down the metro, so a lot of students were stranded. I had a friend who had to hide under tables throughout the whole ordeal. The shooter wasn't even a student, just a random loser obsessed with Columbine and video games. No connection to Dawson. 20 people shot, 1 died. Story was she got shot hiding under a table with her boyfriend. The shooter asked her boyfriend if she was dead. He said no. The shooter shoots her again, kills her. I hope it's not true, but that's what everyone was talking about.
In this little shop of horrors, that's how we get down. Yeah, enter, the project's on the prairie, scary. Greet you at the gate with Bloody Marys. Blood, a rail full of blood. Back to the cemetery, get more blood. Standing on the grave, drinking blood, smoking bones. We seen a crew of ghouls running by with stolen tombstones. With Hell's Angels on the chase, they lust to bust a black skull. Want you embrace, they tie you up in chains and they stomp on your face. They go to purgatory and they beat the fucking case. I look around, mad bodies being